Summer 2020 Webinar Series, Technology Supports for Blind and Low Vision Students, sponsored by the California Department of Education, Clearinghouse for Specialized Media and Technology.
Hi, and welcome to the webinar, Intro to Multimedia Accessibility, Text, Images, and Videos. My name is Ting Siu, and I'm a teacher of blind or low vision students, also known as a teacher of visually impaired students, TVI, as well as a certified orientation and mobility specialist. And you can find me at www.tplus.education and of course on Twitter at TVI_Ting. In this webinar, we are going to go over how to define accessibility in a very practical way for practical use and also for advocacy for blind and low vision students. By the end of this webinar, I hope that you will be able to understand how to format accessible digital text, images, and videos. So to start with, let's review our concepts of Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. Now, some of you might have different understandings or interpretations or even applications of UDL. And in the context of this webinar, we're going to be looking at the main three tenets of UDL. The first being that UDL includes multiple means of representation. So this means having multiple ways of representing information, concepts, and ideas. The second component of UDL is to ensure that there are multiple means of action and expression for students. So this means giving students various ways to plan and execute learning tasks. And finally, the third part of UDL is to ensure that there are multiple means of engagement. So this means giving students different strategies and avenues of creative engagement in their learning process. These are well published by cast.org, and you can find more information and resources about UDL at www.cast.org. So I do want to push back on UDL and challenge you guys to think about how to apply UDL with accessibility in mind. So oftentimes when UDL is applied in education, we find that there's a lot of interactive materials or curriculum, a lot of images and videos. And while these are great for representing information in different ways, giving students different ways to act and express what they know and engage with the learning material, we do need to ensure that these various forms of multimedia are also accessible for non-visual or low vision accessibility. And that's what today's webinar is all about. So, what does multimedia accessibility mean for blind and low vision students? Well, number one, when media and information are accessible, this means that blind and low vision students can independently, timely, and in an equitable manner access information. The word independent is used very loosely to indicate that students, using the appropriate tools and strategies, can access information as independently as they choose, or to be able to dictate the level of independence they want in that process. Or we might think of that as interdependence in that way. By ensuring that media are accessible, this means that students don't need to go through these extensive workarounds to access the same information as their typically sighted peers. So they can get information in a timely manner in the same time as other people. And by so doing, we can ensure that our blind and low vision students have equitable access to information. By making sure that there's this type of equity in access to information, we are ensuring social inclusion for our blind and low vision students, digital inclusion, so that students can access the same materials and platforms as their typically sighted peers. And finally, and most importantly, it empowers our students to not only access and engage in their learning and information, but empowers our students to be leaders and equal contributors in their learning communities. These ideas you can explore further in the textbook, Access Technology for Blind and Low Vision Accessibility. This book is published by APH Press by authors Sue, that's myself, and Ike Presley in 2020. Now, I know everybody might have some different ideas of what accessibility is, but I really love just giving a nod to Ed Summers' definition of accessibility, and that is that accessibility is the absence of barriers. Ed Summers is a blind software engineer and directs the Access Technology Initiatives at SAS Institute. So this is a statistical software, internationally known company, and they're just lucky to have Ed Summers there directing their Access Tech to make sure that all information is accessible to all people. All right, so now that we've reviewed the foundations of UDL and accessibility, let's get started. So first, we are going to take a look at text accessibility. And we see text everywhere, it's ubiquitous, we see it in all different sorts of formats in digital forms, but when we look at text, it is not all the same. So to ensure accessible text, text that is accessible means that it facilitates equitable access to that text-based information, but also it supports equitable usability and being able to navigate the information, to be able to efficiently process that information, and that accessible text must be readable in multiple formats. So meaning if a student or individual needs to access the text visually with low vision features, in an auditory format, or a tactile, meaning that they need to read it on a refreshable braille display, accessible text is going to support readability in all of these multiple formats. And ultimately, this is what is needed for multimodal access. Modalities meaning visual, auditory, or tactile access. Now, when it comes to accessible text and ensuring that it is accessible, usable, you can navigate it in the most efficient manner, formatting is of the utmost importance. So let's take a look and see how usability is different or can be different from readability in text. So in this YouTube video, we have Mark Sutton, who is a blind IT manager, and he is going to demonstrate how he uses a screen reader to navigate a website and why it's so important that text is formatted for usability and accessibility. Okay, here we go.
And what it does is it cleverly determines what's on the screen and presents you that information in a way that would allow for efficient navigation of these pages. So for example, I could just keep reading.
Banner 3 items. Visited, link, image, home.
Line by line, and we could be here all day. Or I could jump to the first heading on the page.
Heading level 2. Search for heading level 2. You are here. Heading level 1. Make videos accessible.
So as I'm moving down through the page, I can look for the category that interests me. And I'm just using commands built into the screen reader. So that's all a pretty simple description of what a screen reader is all about. Now I'm going to go over and show a few examples of how that can fall apart.
Okay, so what Mark did there was show the difference between having to scroll through every single link on a web page, which he said could take all day, or seemingly take all day. But imagine that you're in a classroom and you need to quickly skip to a certain part of the web page, or maybe it's a web page you're not familiar with, and you need to get right to the meat of a certain part of the web page that you're looking for. So if a web page is formatted with headings, it's kind of like having a table of contents laid out at the web page where you can quickly get an overview of what's available and skip to exactly what you want. So this is an example of how even though a website might be readable, it's not necessarily usable unless it's formatted with that heading and outline structure for that table of contents overview and navigation. Okay. So just to reiterate, when it comes to digital text accessibility, formatting is important. So on this slide, we've got a screenshot of a Microsoft Word document. This is a document of an actual little newsletter that went out from one of our professional organizations a few years back. And it was actually put out in a digital format. You can see it's in a Microsoft Word format, and it is readable, but you can also see that as it appears here visually, it is just a block of text. There's no headings, there's no paragraph indentations. And so I wanted to show you basically a visual representation of what text is like when you do not have any headings formatted in for navigation. So obviously we would never, ever, ever disseminate a document that looks like this to sighted audiences. We would always make sure there's paragraphs and nice little headers and subheaders. But when we have a digital text document that is not formatted for usability for screen readers, this is essentially what we're giving to people who need to navigate a document auditorily or with a refreshable braille display. So you could see how you could definitely do a search and find for keywords. However, it would be very difficult to have any sense of a table of contents or outline of a document without this kind of formatting. So rather than sending out a document without any formatting, everybody appreciates good formatting. So just as visually, we like to have documents with headers, paragraph breaks, and whatnot, we need to make sure that similar types of headings are available in our screen reader and auditory and tactile readers. So that's how we can promote this idea of empowering students to be equal partnerships, to be equal partners in their classroom. All right, so we are actually going to head over to Google Docs for a little demo of how to format headings in Google Docs. So in the past, I have actually already recorded a tutorial on how to format headings in Microsoft Word. So if you just do a quick Google search for my name, Ting Siu, on YouTube, that's YUE hyphen capital TING, and then last name Siu, SIU, you'll find my YouTube channel, and in my video collection, you'll see that there already is a tutorial, I think it's about 20 minutes, on how to format headings in Microsoft Word. So here, I'd like to take you through a quick tour of Google Docs to look at how to format headings in Google Docs and how to navigate with the document outline, which actually serves as a very beautiful table of contents in Google Docs. Know that there are actually tons of other tutorials on how to format headings in Google Docs. So if you don't like what you see here, you can always search for other tutorials for a different take on how to format headings. All right, so let's go. Okay, so here we are in my Google Drive. And I just want to do a quickly little tour here. So I have an accessibility tips resource sheet that I've just kind of updated throughout the years. And it's a document that I made in Word, and I just threw it into the Google Drive, or I should say uploaded it to Google Drive. It's the third item in the list here, accessibility tips _ Ting. You'll notice that it is still in the native Word format, and that is okay. So I'm just going to give it a quick double click to open it. And you'll see that when I double click a Word doc, it opens in a view only format. We actually want to get into the meat of it and be able to edit it. So we need to click on Open With and go to Google Docs. All right, so remembering that this was a Word doc that I uploaded to Google Doc, you'll see that it still has this .docx tag on it. Sometimes if you have already created something in Microsoft Word and you're uploading it to Google Docs, I actually will just keep it in this docx format because it helps retain any formatting that maybe you've done in Microsoft Word. But let's say, just for kicks, that this is a document that you've actually created in Google Docs, okay? So let's just, we can, if you like, we can save as Google Docs. And by doing that, we will pretend that this is a document that was created in Google Docs and it was not a document that was uploaded from Microsoft Word, okay? So you've got the Google Docs interface here. So upon first look at this document, I actually want to see, like, are there already headings? So maybe you just got a document from a teacher and you want to see if there are already headings in there, because if there are, great, our work is done, right? So the way I'm going to check and see if there's headings, first of all, I'm just going to click where it visually looks like there should be a heading. And I'm looking in the Styles menu up here, and it just says Normal Text. And under my first subheader, it says Classroom Best Practices. Visually, it looks like another heading, but when I actually click on it, that Styles still says Normal Text. Now you see in Google Docs, in this version at least, as of July 1st, 2020, there's a little icon in the top left margin of the Google Doc. And when I hover my mouse over it, it says Show Document Outline. Another way to access the document line is to go into the View menu, and you can click Document Outline, and you see that it's been checked, but there's also a keyboard shortcut indicated here, which on a Mac computer would be Control Apple A, Control Apple H button. So I'm actually just going to click on the document outline here to show the document outline. I've clicked it. And what Google Docs has tried to do here is it's attempted to be smart and to guess what the headings are. So even though when we click in the first header, it says normal text, Google Docs has guessed that these might potentially be headers. So, you know, it has done a pretty good job of guessing what the headers are, but we'll see that they're only best guesses. So for example, in this section that's called Multimedia Accessibility, there are some subsections within the section of Multimedia Accessibility, and these headings titled Web Accessibility, Image Description, and Video Description, they're not showing up on the document outline. And so we do want to go in and just very quickly format all of these headings so that if a student were to download this file, for example, that heading structure would be there, okay? The other nice thing about making sure these headings are structured is that as a teacher, it makes your documents more searchable and it helps with everybody's navigation. So this supports usability of the document, not just for that blind or low vision student in the classroom, but actually every student in the classroom can benefit from being able to open this document outline and seeing a comprehensive table of contents view of the document. Especially when you've got a longer handout maybe, it can be very handy to have that table of contents for students to be able to jump right to a section, okay? So here we go. The accessibility tip sheet, this is my title of the document. I'm simply going to highlight it, and I like the visual formatting. It's centered and it's bolded. So I'm gonna go to my styles menu. I'll click the drop down, and I want this to be the title, but I want it to look the way I have already formatted it to look in Arial, bold, centered font. So when I go to the title menu, I simply go update title to match. And now, when I put my cursor in the title, you'll see in my styles menu that it is a title. Moving on to the next heading, classroom best practices. I'm going to highlight it. And again, I like the visual formatting of it being bolded, underlined, and left aligned. So I'm just going to highlight it, go up to my styles menu, scroll down to heading level 1, and update heading 1 to match. Now we want to format our headings not necessarily in sequential order, but as if you're outlining the document. So our next header here, Documents Accessibility, it's the same heading level as Classroom Best Practices. So this is also going to be a heading level 1. And remember, because we've already updated heading level to match it to be bold, left align, and underline, we simply have to highlight Documents Accessibility, go up to the Styles menu, and click heading level 1, and it will automatically format this as heading level 1. So, you know, visually it doesn't change, but this makes a big difference, again, for that screen reader or Braille display and any student who wants to see this showing up as a table of contents, okay? So I've opened up the document outline again to show you how the table of contents, or rather the document outline, will update as we format the document. And I also want to show you how quickly you can do this. So I'm going to go down to my next heading level. This is another heading 1, highlight it, click heading level 1, there's my multimedia accessibility. And then under multimedia accessibility, I've got some subsections, right? So now these would be our heading level 2. So I'm going to highlight the first heading level 2. I need to define that I want my heading level 2 to be bolded and left aligned. So I go down to heading 2 in my styles menu. I click update heading 2 to match. And now for every following heading level 2, I can just highlight it and click heading 2. And there we go. And you can see on the left that the document outline is updating as we go. And this also gives you an idea of how to structure your headings so that the heading level ones are your big sections, and then the heading level 2 would be like where you would make that first indent on your paper outline. Okay, so I'm going to keep going down here, and we've got another heading level 2 because we have several subsections under multimedia accessibility. There we go, 3D printing for accessibility. And now we have the section on universal design, and this is actually going back to our heading level 1 because it's that bolded and underlined part, right? So there we go. And then miscellaneous, that's also a heading level 1. And that is actually the end of our document. So now if you look on the left at the document outline, you have a beautiful table of contents of the paper or of this article. And it was pretty easy. So you just have to do a one-time definition of what each heading style looks like, and you can quickly go through and format the whole document. Not too bad, right? Okay, so let's return to our slides. All right, so as we finish up this section on text accessibility, I wanted to leave you guys with a few resources on the topic. My go-to resource for text accessibility is the WebAIM website, and that is located at www.webaim.org. And AIM is just an acronym that stands for Web Accessibility in Mind. On this website, you'll find great step-by-step directions on how to format a Microsoft Word document, a PDF, a PowerPoint, for accessibility. So for those of you who would much rather have like a text-based set of instructions, they've got great step-by-steps here. As mentioned earlier, I also already recorded a YouTube video on formatting for Microsoft Word accessibility. So I've spelled out my full name again here, YUE-Ting and last name Siu, S-I-U, so that you can find my YouTube channel and also find this video on YouTube. And also, as mentioned, there are already lots of other videos on how to format headings in Google Docs in case you'd like to see that information presented in a different way. So I hope you'll find some of these resources for text accessibility helpful to your practice. Remember that these are simply introductory resources, and the demo that we just went through with formatting headings, it's just the beginning. There's a lot more if you want comprehensive text accessibility, relating to accessible forms or accessible charts or tables. There's a lot more to go into. So this is simply introductory material, okay? So at this point, let's move along to image accessibility. Think about all the places that you see images in a digital format. It could be a document, a digital book like an EPUB. It could be a website, and it could even be social media, and very often social media. For our students, they're going to encounter lots of images on social media as well as on websites that are assigned, particularly on websites that have a lot of image-based content that you'll find in a lot of K-12 applications. It is so important that all of these images have alt text, or as we call, image description, so that students have that equitable access to information. So, something that even might be eye candy, so it could just be an icon or a logo, that image, it might be eye candy because it doesn't really contribute knowledge or information about something content specific, but students still might need to be aware of what that eye candy is if it's going to be a point of reference for the teacher. So, a teacher might say, oh, let's look at the paragraph where that red balloon is. Or students might have a conversation about, oh, like that is such a silly little animation with a little kid holding the balloon. So I personally like to have that information for eye candy. And if it is eye candy, it might just be some brief description, but just enough information that the students have those same references that the others typically sighted students have visually. So let's go back to where we might find alt text, or also known as image description. So on social media, and I like to bring this up because we've got probably a lot of teachers watching this, and anybody who's really promoting anything online or information online, there's a lot of images. And I just wanted to remind you guys, especially those in the field of, vision education or rehabilitation, that we have colleagues who are blind or low vision who use screen readers who benefit from alt text. And as professionals in the field of vision rehabilitation or education, we need to walk the talk. Walk the walk and talk the talk. So if we're also going to be disseminating information, we are first and foremost responsible for being role models for other professionals and ensuring that all the information that we are disseminating, whether in that text, image, or video format, are truly accessible. So in social media, you might provide an image description or alt text in a couple different ways. One is in an embedded manner. So on the left picture on this slide, there is a post done by the program in visual impairments at San Francisco State University. And it's a little, advert on an upcoming webinar coming up. And there's, don't miss tomorrow's webinar from CDE curriculum on screen sharing tools and strategies. There's a date and a time, a link to it. And then there's a picture underneath the webinar post. And yes, this might be considered eye candy because it's the picture isn't necessarily adding any relevant information. But again, this is a reference point. And you'll also see that within this picture, there is text in the picture. So even though there's text, it's not readable text that a screen reader or a braille display would be able to show. So at the end of the post, there's a parentheses, and in the parentheses it says image : a pair of binoculars with text that includes the title, time and date of the webinar, and URL. So this is a great example of an embedded alt text where just within the social media post, there's a brief description of what's in the image. And you'll notice that in the alt text, I did not necessarily rewrite all the text that was in the image because that information was already given in the post. So there's no need to be redundant here. We're just being brief and concise and giving only the information that's really needed. Now, the other way to provide alt text is to actually insert it as alternative text. So on the right side of the slide, we have a screenshot from one of the social media platforms. This is either a screenshot from Twitter or Instagram, but it works very similarly. When you upload a picture in Twitter or Instagram, there's an option to add or edit alt text. You'll also see this option in Facebook as well. So when you click that option to edit or add alt text, you'll see a little edit box pop up, and sometimes there's a little hint to say, such as this, where it says, describe this image for the visually impaired. And this is where we can just describe the image, and then when you hit apply and save it, visually, people who are just using visual access for this post, they'll see the image. But if you're using a screen reader, it will actually access and read aloud that alt text. So having it actually inserted as alt text can be nicer for reducing the character count or reducing the length of the post. So it's kind of a personal decision, or maybe it depends on the platform whether or not there's a character limitation if you prefer to do embedded or alt text. Okay, and for each of those social media platforms, you can also just do a Google search where you put in the name of the platform and how to insert alt text, and each platform has really good documentation of how to do that. So if you need more specific information, depending on the platform you're using, go ahead and Google search that, and you will find the documentation you need for a great step-by-step guide. And just finally to remember that alt text and that option to add alt text can also be found in PowerPoint, so Microsoft PowerPoints, Microsoft Word, in various handouts, and also in Google Slides or Google Docs, as we just saw. Okay, so remembering that, we just went through how to handle accessibility of images in social media, but there's also going to be images in your PowerPoints, in Microsoft Word, and in handouts. And of course, the counter of that, Google Slides and Google Docs, and any sort of word processing or presentation type of document. Now, speaking of documents, or speaking of handouts, I wanted to let you know how, even though the platform might be different, for example, whether you're working in Microsoft Word or Google Docs, the platform or interface might look different, but there are similar features for adding alt text or image description in these types of documents. So on the left side of this slide, we've got a screenshot from Microsoft Word where there's an image in the document, and I've basically right-clicked on the image, and there's a menu that pops up and an option to edit alt text. And so when you click edit alt text, you get a little edit box, and that's where you can insert the alt text. And again, you want to make sure you keep it pretty brief and concise and only describe what you really need to see. Now, on the right side of the slide, it's another screenshot, this time in Google Docs, and we've got the same document actually. And again, we've activated the menu that comes when you right-click on the image. And again, you can see that when this pops up, you get an option to click on alt text, and then you can write in the little image description in the edit box that pops up. So in case anybody is thinking, wow, well, how do I actually write a good description, or what goes into a good description? I thought we'd just spend a couple minutes on looking at some of the description guidelines, okay? So here is a very general overview of description guidelines. Step one is simply to observe and describe what you see. So you are looking at the picture and you are only describing what you see. Use of vivid language can be very helpful, as well as looking at the descriptive elements of the image. So what's the color, shape, or line, or texture? But also understanding that, step two, you do need to analyze the image and ask yourself, what is the purpose of this image? So, as I mentioned before, if it's eye candy, you just need the briefest of descriptions so that a student might be able to use that image as the visual anchor or visual reference point that others might use it for that purpose. We want to try not to infer too much for the reader, because we're going to only describe the elements that convey the mood or the meaning and message, so that whoever is interacting with the image description can still develop their own inference from that image. Third, after observing the image, analyzing the image, it's time to communicate information about the image. So when we're writing, and this is just a good writing activity in general, we want to choose words that are going to give us clear, precise language. In general, when it comes to describing an image, we want to take a drill down approach. So giving the overall gestalt of the image, and then tunneling down to more specific details. We want to prioritize the description so that the most important elements of an image you're going to go through first. And again, I can't overemphasize that recommendation to use vivid and descriptive words, and to eliminate any extra information or language if at all possible. Because, remember that we are helping to support efficient navigation and interaction with this text as well. So, people aren't really going to be reading a document for a novel of image description, but they just need as much information as is needed to get the information that the image is there to convey. It's also nice to use consistent vocabulary. So if there's a way to refer to a certain element with certain vocabulary, you want to keep consistent with that vocabulary word. I always like using present tense. So the boy walks versus the boy is walking. So reducing that overall word count can help with efficient interaction with the image as well. So there is definitely an art and science of description, but some of the science of description is making sure there is that consistency and also predictability of what you're going to say and how you're going to describe an image. This idea of using predictable language is even more important when you're describing STEM images. For example, if you're going through a lot of different charts and graphs, if the reader is able to anticipate that you will always describe the x-axis first and then the y-axis, for example, that can help ease that use of the image description as well. So there are a couple additional resources for image accessibility that I like to share. The first one is from the Diagram Center. So if you just do a Google search for Diagram Center image description guidelines, you will find it. This is a nice set of guidelines that I helped Diagram Center to publish a few years ago. And under these guidelines, you'll find just general basic guidelines for describing any image. And then there's also a section that almost provides like a template, like Mad Lib style, of how do I describe different types of STEM images. So different types of graphs or different types of charts. What's sort of like the format of describing those types of images for predictability. And then the next resource that I'd like to share is from one of my favorite websites, Veronica with 4 Eyes. You can find Veronica at www.veronica, spelled with 4 letter I's.com. And if you go on her blog and just do a search for alt text, she's got some really nice blog posts on how to insert alt text for images on different types of platforms, how she uses alt text as a low vision college student, and tips for writing alt text for different types of images. So great stuff on her website that I highly recommend. All right, so let's move along to video accessibility. Super fun. So thinking about videos that can be assigned in the classroom or videos that are just shared amongst like a friend group, social group, in a family, there's a lot of video content in our lives these days. So what happens with described videos or making sure that videos are accessible? Well, when it comes to video description, there's a couple different uses. There is a difference between having alt text versus captions, or image description versus captions. So, just a quick reminder that when you have captions on a video, it's just a text transcript of any auditory information, versus when you have image description, or it's also known as audio or video description, you are giving an audio description of visual information, okay? So you are going to see features for audio description on a lot of different video platforms. Some people refer to it as video description instead of audio description, but it's really interchangeably used to indicate just any sort of descriptive information for visual information that might be missed without this audio description, okay? So before I go into showing you some examples of accessible videos and inaccessible videos, I wanted to just point you guys to 2 types of description that you'll find in described videos. The first is inline description. And with inline description, the video keeps playing and that audio description kind of runs along on top of the video, and the video keeps playing uninterrupted with a simple recorded track that describes the visual information that might be missed. Versus extended description, where you'll see that a video might actually pause to create a space for an extended audio description. So this will oftentimes happen when a describer wants to describe more information than would be allowed in a little audio break in the video, okay? So again, when the video keeps running and you hear description, that's inline description, but when a video is paused and then you hear that audio description, that's referred to as extended description, okay? So in this next video, let's check out what we're really talking about when we encounter video on the web. So on this slide, I'm going to show you a video on how to make ... And I have deliberately made this video so small that I hope that it's actually impossible to see. What I'd like you to do is close your eyes right now, and as I play the video, I want you to try and guess what this video is about. How to make what, okay? So are you ready? Close your eyes, and I'm going to play the video, and let's see if you can take your best guess on what it is saying, giving you directions on what to make. I wonder, I'm just hearing some music. Okay, I wonder what they're making. Well, let's find out. Chicken fries poutine. Could you tell that they were making chicken fries poutine? I definitely couldn't because all I heard was music. And this happens so often with video content where you've got this music in the background and it's great because it's pretty much a silent video. And this is a great example of a video where without description, the information that the video is trying to convey is 100% inaccessible. Yeah? So let's actually see how to make chicken fries poutine, okay? On this slide, I've got a screenshot of the yue-describe website, and you can find this at yue-describe.org, and yue-describe is a free tool for adding description to any YouTube video. On the screenshot here, you can see that, you know, if I'm looking for, I've heard my friends talking about this video on how to make chicken fries poutine, and I'm thinking, oh, that sounds really great. But, you know, the link that my friend sent me, it was a silent movie or just some sort of music video, but I want to see if it's been described. So I can go to yue-describe.org. I type in the title of the video, chicken fries poutine, and what yue-describe does is it actually searches the YouTube database for that video as well as the yue-describe database, so that if this is a video that's been described, it will pop up at the very top of the page under the heading described videos. Now, if the video had not already been described, it would just come up with all the other YouTube search results under non-described videos, okay? So let's take a look again at the described version of this video. And just so you guys know, anybody can describe a video. All you have to do is create an account with your Google login, and you know, you can have a paraprofessional do this, you can have a friend, a relative. As a teacher of blind and low vision students, I have described a whole number of videos for friends and colleagues who have requested description of videos. So let's take a look at the same exact video with description and see what you guys think. Okay, so let's take a look at actually how we can make chicken fries poutine, and I'm looking at the video on yue-describe. Here we go.
Take 1 pound of chicken breast and slice it into little strips. Sprinkle a generous amount of salt and ground black pepper on top. Incorporate it all together. In a new bowl, combine ½ teaspoon of ground white pepper, 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Mix this, and after add 1/2 cup of flour. Mix this all together.
Okay, did you guys catch that? So the beginning of this video, there were some inline descriptions, right? Where you heard the description as the video was playing, and then the video paused so that there could be an extended description. So just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of that. And okay, let's finish watching.
In another bowl, crack 3 eggs and whisk them together. Place the 2 bowls side to side. Add a third bowl at the end of 2 cups of panko breadcrumbs. Take each chicken strip and coat it in the contents of each bowl, from the flour to egg to breadcrumbs. Drop the strips in a pan on the stove containing 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. In a new bowl, put in 1 package of McCormick's brown gravy mix. Combine this with 1 cup of water. Mix and microwave for 2 to 3 minutes. Finally, grab a plate and place the cooked chicken strips on top of it. Sprinkle 4 ounces of cheese curds on top of the strips.
Okay, I'm going to stop the video right there because it's making me a little bit hungry. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. I love this video because it's got a great mix of inline and extended description, and it's also a great example of how you can take a totally inaccessible video, add some description, and now this video can be accessed and enjoyed by everybody. All right, you guys, so that rounds us out to the end of our little introduction to video description. Just to review, what we just saw was a described video on youdescribe.org, and this is a totally free tool where anybody can add description to any YouTube video. And on the left side of this slide, we just have the youdescribe logo and the youdescribe motto, which is to be descriptive, be brief, and be part of the solution. Just in case you're ever interested, you can, if you have blind students or blind colleagues who want to make a request for a description, there is a wish list on the website. You can also get excited about described videos that you've made or want to share by tagging them on Twitter. And youdescribe is on Twitter at Skeri, SKERI_YD. And sometimes you might see the hashtag VDESC, short for video description. So it's VIDESC. So youdescribe, again, is that great tool for anybody to use to add description. But just also wanted to let you guys know that there are professional describers out there who do professional level of description. And you will find professional audio description on a number of streaming platforms. Netflix, if you click on the language options, usually it's next to the subtitle menu. If audio descriptions are available, as it is here on this menu, this Netflix menu, you'll see English-audio description, and you simply check it. Content is getting better and better, and this is definitely an area of advocacy. So Hulu is starting to get on board with audio description, and Amazon Prime Video. So basically any type of streaming service, I would encourage you to teach your students to launch the subtitles menu, look and see if there's audio description. And if not, this is a great chance to contact the platform and request for it. A lot of TV shows will have this as well, and it really depends on the network. So definitely lots of opportunities for advocacy here, okay? But also lots of opportunities for improved access to described media. All right, and if anybody is interested in more resources for video accessibility, a go-to place for especially educational content is the Described and Captioned Media Program, or also known as DCMP. So if you go on the DCMP website, and again, I usually just do a Google search for this, so you can go to DCMP, and they have a great big library of accessible content that's been captioned and described. So sometimes you can go there first to see if those educational videos are already available in an accessible format, which will save you a lot of work and time and avoid having to do your own descriptions on youdescribe. 3Play Media is a nice vendor service where you can actually hire them, give them a video, and they will describe the video for you. So this might be a nice option if you're doing something a little bit lengthier, maybe a longer video or a longer instructional video that's maybe not available on YouTube. They're a great vendor service to do those descriptions and captions. And then back to Veronica with 4 eyes. Veronica has a great blog post titled Creating Audio Description for Primary Source Videos with youdescribe. And it's just a nice little tutorial on how to create those descriptions, how to use youdescribe, again, from the perspective of somebody who enjoys described video. So Veronica just has great stuff. Okay, so far we have gone through just those introductory concepts of how to format text, images, and video for multimedia accessibility. From those foundational strategies and some tools for doing that, I want to take us across the finish line by talking about how we can advocate for multimedia accessibility. And one thing about advocacy in this area is it's a team effort. And I wanted to, do this little cheer because, oftentimes, especially as teachers of blind and low vision students, it can feel like a very isolating job, and it can feel like very isolating work. Well, the good news is that when it comes to multimedia accessibility, there truly is a village of support and advocacy that we can call on to support us. There are a lot of media producers that are going to be engaged and all in on improving these accessibility efforts. You can call on organizations or different platforms or companies to improve the accessibility of their products. One thing that I really feel passionate about is connecting with your school's technology administrators to get accessibility into the conversation. A lot of universities have accessibility language in their procurement policy, meaning that universities will commit to only adopting or only purchasing products that have been vetted for accessibility. And I think the next step is for K-12 districts to do something similar, to commit to truly serving every student. And the only way to do that is to commit to only implementing platforms and tools that are vetted for accessibility, and only working with companies who are going to commit to making sure their products are accessible for every student. So, who is in this village? Who's on that team to help you advocate? Well, there are education and rehabilitation professionals, especially in our VI world. There are parents, friends, and relatives. Gen Ed teachers can really get on board too, because oftentimes you'll find that when there's accessible media, it actually benefits all students in the classroom, not just our blind and low vision students. There are many students who benefit from captions or text-to-speech access, or that sort of multimodal access. A lot of students with print disabilities or even English language learners can benefit from these types of features that come with accessible multimedia. So Gen Ed teachers can really get on board with this, especially if you can show how it benefits all the students in their classroom and can help elevate their teaching. Another group of people that I found very, very helpful to connect with are alternate media specialists. So alternate media specialists, or alt media specialists, their whole job is about ensuring that all instructional media are accessible. Now, this is a job position that is usually only found in higher ed, so colleges and university systems. But absolutely anybody can, fulfill the role of an alt media specialist in K-12. And I don't know, another pie in the sky thought I have is I think there would be a great avenue of support if we could have alt media specialists in the K-12 system to help ensure that all these instructional media are formatted for accessibility, so that that burden of doing this alt media work doesn't necessarily fall on the teachers. Because imagine if you had an alt media specialist ensuring that the media were accessible, then teachers could really just focus on teaching the content, which would be amazing. The next person on the team, paraprofessionals. I think this is a great place for paraprofessionals to provide some very critical support. So I hope that we're all in agreement here that paraprofessionals never need to be glued to a student's side 100% of the time. And actually, paraprofessionals are probably best in that role of supporting a student when they can support the student from a distance. So one way to do that is to help mediate the materials that come to a student to ensure that all of those multimedia materials are accessible for the student, so the student can just walk into the room and get right to learning and engagement. Inclusion and resource specialists I've also called upon in different districts, depending on how different districts are set up. So I've definitely worked with inclusion and resource specialists where I've trained on how to format different documents or worksheets so that they can help make sure that these materials are getting to the student in that accessible format. And then finally, developers. web developers who are responsible for the websites, software developers who are building those apps. Those developers, they just need a little bit of education and maybe resources for those accessibility resources to, just a reminder that, hey, when you're building this or that, let's think about making sure that is compliant with these accessibility standards that are already well published. So, at the end of the day, I think one way that you can find common ground across all these different team members to come together and advocate for accessible multimedia is to emphasize that right for everybody to have equity in being able to access information. Because remember, whoever has got access to the information has power. So we are all about ensuring equity in the classroom, and also not just access, you guys, but equitable opportunities for leadership and engagement too, so that our students can really be seen and respected as equal shareholders or stakeholders in their learning communities. All right, well, I have one final resource to share with you guys, and this is my accessibility tip sheet. This is the tip sheet that you saw at the very beginning of this presentation, where we went through and formatted the headings in the Google Doc. And in case anybody wanted to get a copy of that accessibility tip sheet for yourself, I have placed a hyperlink here to the tip sheet. And I recommend you can download this tip sheet for your own use. You can forward it. But this tip sheet is updated fairly frequently. So every now and then you might want to just actually bookmark this link and re-download it so you always have the most updated version of the tip sheet, okay? And this tip sheet you can download from bit.ly/A11Y tips -Siu, S-I-U, that's my last name. So please, feel free to share this freely, share it widely, share it with all those people who are in that village who can help you advocate for multimedia accessibility. And with that, I wanted to thank you for watching this webinar. Thanks for caring about multimedia accessibility, and I hope that you can take this information and train others on this very important content to make sure every student has equitable access to their learning opportunities wherever they are. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Ting Siu, and you can find me on Twitter at TVI_Ting. And I also run a little Facebook group called Multimedia Accessibility in the Digital Classroom, in case you ever come across any other apps or resources or strategies for doing multimedia accessibility. We welcome an exchange of information on this Facebook page. And in case anybody's interested in finding me at my day job or pursuing that credential to teach blind and low vision students or a doctoral level, we have doctoral and master's degree programs at San Francisco State, and you can find more information at viprogram.sfsu.edu. Okay, thanks again. See you later.
Sponsored by the California Department of Education, Clearinghouse for Specialized Media and Technology. Video editing by Monica Kulanai, SF State VI Program. viprogram.sfsu.edu.